Would you like to play a game with me today? It's called Branding Myths Busted. Just like a Cosmo quiz, you're going to keep your score tally in your mind as we work through the episode today, where I'll be covering 10 misconceptions that successful entrepreneurs have about their branding. Ready to play? Let's go! But it can actually have quite a mishmash, and you feel really uplifted and happy about butterflies, not flutterbies, that you just look like a little bit of a I'm going to be covering the 10 misconceptions that successful entrepreneurs have about their branding with you today. If you identify that you do in fact have that misconception, you get to score a point. Keep a tally as we work through the episode, and then you'll get a final score at the end. You are more than welcome to let me know what your score was below in the comments, or if you'd rather keep this a little bit secret, you can get in touch with me with a quick DM on Instagram. And you should probably think about subscribing to Moi TV, because we're going to be covering this in the next few weeks in more detail. Myth number 1 then, that it's all a tick box exercise. Now this particular misconception about branding drives me and a lot of my fellow creative suppliers absolutely potty. And in fact, recently on the show, I shared a story in this episode where I was guilty of this misconception myself. I was trying to treat all of my branding like a quick, easy tick box exercise. You can find out why that didn't work for me. I'll put a link to that episode in the show notes so you can watch it next. So are you thinking about your branding like this? Need a logo. Got a logo. Need some colours. Got some colours. Need fonts family. Get a font family. Probably could use some better photos. I'll get some photos. Really need to send some online traffic to that web page. Okay, got that done now. Now, working like this could seem like the logical right way to handle things in a step-by-step approach, but actually what can happen is it has quite a mishmash effect on your final branding. You're kind of preventing the potential that your brand could become. When you try to chip away at things like this, you're inadvertently putting each of the creative suppliers that you need to work with to get each of those tasks done into their own silo. And you are inadvertently making yourself the creative bottleneck in your business. Even if you identify as somebody who is really creative, you're going to run into problems. You can't remember the exact same set of information for each of the creative suppliers you're working with. So each of them is going to be given a slightly skewed version of the information you need to impart. Nobody's perfect. Nobody can remember the exact same set of words in a repetitive way like this. So that is totally normal human nature, but it can have an effect on the way that those suppliers supply creative to you. It's quite easy to get around this, of course. You just need to make sure that you have a living branding guidelines document. Now, by living, I mean that you are continually adding to it or refreshing it as your brand is evolving. But this is the document that you will give to each of your creative suppliers to debrief them in the right amount of detail with the right set of facts so that they can do a really sterling job for you. This is a big document and it needs to be maintained on a very regular basis. So if you know that you are guilty of this misconception, you now get a point. Myth number 2, measuring isn't important. Now, measuring the success of your branding on a regular basis is incredibly unsexy. But it is crucial if you want a brand that's really going to work for you. This data really reinforces the natural entrepreneur. So if you're used to following your intuition or you get a hunch about something and you know that's the way you want to focus, having data like this can help prove that that thought is the right way to go or actually hold you back from wasting your time. And making business decisions with that data behind you will give you a regular monthly refocus. You know where to push more, where to hold back, so that you can stick to your overall plans. And working in this way can actually result in saving a lot of time and a lot of wasted money. Far better to know that what you're focusing on is what works, do more of what works, do less of what doesn't in your marketing. Now, if you are bootstrapping because you're at the start of your business journey and you're reluctant to think about which outsourcing you should do, this is actually a really cool one to consider, along with a bookkeeper. Having somebody else do these same readings on a monthly basis is a really great way to know that the information and the numbers aren't lying. I know when you're creative and you avoid numbers, like I certainly do, getting somebody else to help you with this is a great way to keep you focused. And of course, it's worth pointing out, the longer you accumulate this data, the more in-depth the reading becomes. Avoid getting sucked into the vanity metrics, so things like how many email list subscribers you have or how many followers you have on a social platform. Instead, you want to dig a little bit deeper than that. Figure out which posts were your best performing posts across all of social media, what got you the most engagement, and when you can start figuring out why that happened, you know how to step it up and focus on that trend a little bit more for your business. If you know you don't measure key data like this, then give yourself a point. Misconception number 3. It's all about me. I am my brand. I'm just living my best life. Ego, ego, ego. If you've watched my TV before, then you should know already that I am a huge advocate of using personal branding techniques to build up any small business, particularly service-based businesses. If you want to learn a little bit more about that, you can go and watch this episode, which again, I'll put in the show notes below for you to watch later. However, where personal branding techniques can fall off the edge of a metaphorical branding cliff is when key decisions are made based on ego instead of being based on strategy. Picking out a brand colour because it's your favourite colour, or coming up with the genius idea of adding a butterfly as a little emblem to your logo because you just really love butterflies, are some examples of making personal branding decisions based on your ego. They're all decisions based on what you personally like. You are not your ideal customer and client, so making these decisions could actually be turning them off from your brand. Maybe they hate butterflies. I've already ranted about this before on the show, but it's worth pointing out now. Another annoying aspect of this ego factor when it comes to personal branding in particular is when the ego of the person behind the personal brand starts going against the key messages that they're striving to share and broadcast. A really easy example of this, to get what I mean, is to think about a brand where the overall message is, we're all in this together, let's pull together and raise each other up. But then the next day on social media, they're showing off their personal lavish life. Another good example of this might be having key branding messages that are all about how their particular customer is really at the heart of what they do, but actually their complaints process is completely hideous and really out of date. See how those things start bashing against each other. If you've watched this and you now realise that you've made some branding decisions based on your ego instead of thinking about branding strategy, give yourself a point. Myth number 4. Jumping on too many trends. Thinking about trends then, so whether this is behaviourally based or it's to do with certain buzzwords and language, the type of vernacular that people have started using, you don't know when that trend started working, or it could be to do with certain behaviours that people start showing online. These are all things that you need to think about on a regular basis when you're thinking about the overall strength and power of your brand. Doing things that are against your principles can chip away at your perception over time. A current one might be blindly cancelling your entire month ahead because you want to be on Clubhouse as much as possible because you think there's a chance that you could become an influencer there, is probably not the best idea if you've already mapped out what you're doing this month, and what you're doing this month fits your overall business and branding goals for the rest of the year. Rushing over to TikTok because all the kids are there right now might actually be really incongruent with your overall branding message, and you're getting panicked with the FOMO because you think that everyone's there, so you need to be there. If it doesn't fit your branding strategy or the behaviors and perception of your brand, you need to just hold back and try and get over the FOMO. Another example might be using a spot color effect on your Christmas card for the year because it's dead trendy. Actually, that's really not trendy. That would be the kind of example way back in 2004 of what I'm talking about. Falling for trends like this is just the same as shiny ball syndrome, or sometimes this is referred to as squirrel behavior. Most trends come and go quickly. And in fact, if you are jumping on every new trend every single time it comes out, the overall perception and understanding of who you are is somebody who is quite flighty, unpredictable, and overall quite unreliable. And now those are synonyms and ideas that you do not want to be affiliated with your brand. If you identify as a sucker for a trend when it comes to business, give yourself a point. Myth number 5, but I'm pretty creative, you know. Okay, this could be completely true. It could be exactly the accurate way to describe you. Perhaps the nature of your business is actually incredibly creative. Maybe you paint, maybe you make something. Maybe your specific creative skills have been the passion of your life and you spent the last 25 years honing your abilities with them. All of this is incredibly amazing. You are creative and you are a fully fledged artiste. All of these things have jack all to do with your branding capabilities. I'm sorry, there, I've said it, it's true. Now, I am more than confident that because of your creative grounding and all of the years you've invested in building up those skills will have given you what's known as a creative eye. So this means you are really intelligent in a visual way at interpreting what looks and what feels good. So the overall aesthetic of something, it could be a colorway, you will get a strong feeling and an instant feeling of what works and what doesn't. The rest of branding though, I don't know. There is an exact science behind the really great branding, and this is all grounded on technical data. Now, letting go of decisions can feel really emotional and to the point of it feeling painful for the very creative or very intuition-led business owner. And weirdly enough, this is a current little fascination of mine. The more creative the business owner, the more likely it is that there is a really uncreative and sometimes quite outdated approach to some of the activities in their business when it comes to branding that is below the line. So this could be things like the way that they onboard new customers into their business. It could be the way that they manage complaints or customer loyalty, or working in a meticulous way to iterate the branding through the brand experience, so the way that people buy from you. It's really weird, but it's really common. I don't know why yet. Now, if you know you've ever let your artiste emotions get the better of you when it comes to your branding, give yourself a point. Myth number 6. Let's just rebrand again. If you've rebranded more than 3 times in the last 5 years, then there's a very good chance that you are using the excitement of rebranding as a procrastination to avoid doing something else. Brand boredom is a very real thing. But I am a big believer in that if it's not broken, don't try to fix it. If you know that your brand is helping you to grow your business and you're attracting the right people who really resonate with your brand and who you want to serve, then your brand is working. So stop messing with it. Indecision is also a worthwhile factor to bear in mind here. Going back over and over again and making all these tiny little minute details to your branding is a really good indicator that you've got something going on with your self-confidence right now. Losing progress and momentum with your business brand evolution is really common with a lot of entrepreneurs as a result of indecision. And that can actually have a debilitating effect on the brand growing in the right way at the right pace. If you're recognizing this about you, try to find people who you can surround yourself with, who can help to lift you up and build your self-confidence, but also people who can really help mentor you in making these decisions faster so that you can move on to the next thing. If you know you've done this, give yourself a point. Myth number 7, I'm too scared of haters, or I'm dead wacky me. It's a perfectly understandable viewpoint in this day and age to be concerned or cautious about the idea of finding haters online. Being scared of trolls or people criticizing a braver branding decision is actually quite normal. But this absolutely means that you shouldn't stick in the lane of playing things safe and keeping it beige when you're thinking about your brand. All great brands are really divisive. This means it should be pushing the people away that you don't want to work with and attracting the people that you do want to work with into your business. Now, part of this repelling factor is actively going about turning the wrong people off from your brand. Another example of this myth could be thought about when you think about following suit. Copying the order or the process that a bigger brand, a more successful business in your marketplace has already worked and carved out and forged for themselves feels like walking down a nice easy stroll down the well-trodden path. You feel like it's guaranteed success because it worked for them. That's very rarely the case. You want to make sure that your overall brand perception feels quite different to that person that you're thinking or getting concerned about emulating, because there are people in that marketplace who have been turned off by that brand. You want to be the brand that appeals to those people. So it's fair to say doing the same thing as them is not going to work for you because they already have those customers. On the flip side of playing it far too safe and vanilla is going really zany and technicolor with your approach. It is absolutely possible to go too far. Doing everything wild and loud and at level 11 with your brand has the exact same effect as being quiet and boring and plain. It's just that it's incredibly loud, like a horrible din, and it's very crass. If you know you're playing it too safe or you're a little bit too far ahead on the zany scale, give yourself a point. Myth number 8. Logo and colours are my whole brand. If I had £1 for every time somebody started explaining their brand to me and then the actual conversation ended up me just understanding a little bit more about their logo and their colours, well, let's just say I'd have a lot more bling on today in this episode. Your branding absolutely needs a well thought out and properly researched colour palette. Your brand really does need a great logo that encapsulates the entire essence of your business. And your brand needs so much more than these things to make it successful. I go into all of the details of all the extra components you should be thinking about adding to your brand here on Moi TV. So if you know you are about to give yourself a point, I want you to also think about hitting that subscribe button and sticking around so I can help you out more with this. If this is you, give yourself a point. Myth number 9. Well, this doesn't apply to me. Resting on the laurels. This is just like Pride in that it comes before the fall. And this is the exact same thing that is true of branding. Maybe you are really successful and you hit your big number turnover goal. You got 1 million in half the time that you'd forecasted for. Maybe what powered all of that income was you leading a really small team and everyone was fueled by your tenacity. Congratulations. Seriously, if this is you, I take my hat off to you. You're doing amazing and I'm really impressed. After we've enjoyed a round of drinks that is celebrating you, which you can pick up the tab for, we should start talking about your brand strategy. Investing a really small share of the money that you've turned over is a great idea in thinking about how you can keep your brand crystal clear and really sharply focused on maintaining your level and frequency of success. What's better than smashing a goal once? Smashing that goal over and over and over again for a really long time. Resting on the laurels when it comes to your branding can be a really fast way to fall straight back down from those dizzy heights and worry about how you're going to get back there again. Trusting in more people feels a little bit like it's counterproductive. You don't know why you should be adapting and changing what you're doing in order to maintain progress on the same thing. But it is absolutely true when it comes to your branding. If you know you're guilty of this, then give yourself a point. Myth number 10. This is far too arty-farty for me. That sounds like creative mumbo jumbo, Laura. I've heard that phrase or something similar to that an awful lot in my career so far. What I see as crystal clear creative that has been beautifully inspired by a wealth and depth of inspirations to some people seems like unorganized creative mumbo jumbo. And actually, when I spin it on its head, this is the same for me when I try and interpret a lot of numbers. This is why I have my accountant. I know that when she shows me a list of numbers in my tax return, I can trust her to tell me that they're all on point, because a lot of it doesn't make sense to me. Now, that particular piece of feedback is actually what makes me really love working with people who define themselves as not that creative. Putting together a team of somebody who is technically brilliant at what they do with a creative like me is just like finding the right blocker and the right jammer to make a really successful roller derby team. Very different skills, but beautiful together. If you know that you've dismissed creative because you didn't really get it, then give yourself that point. It's time to do a tally up. What was your final score? You can tell me what this was below in the comments, or if you'd rather keep it secret, please do send it over to me on Instagram in a secret DM. I promise I won't tell anyone. If you'd like to discuss this score in a little bit more detail with me, then I would like to invite you to visit my Cyber Cocktail Call page on my website. You can book in 15 minutes where we can have a quick conversation together about what you scored and what this might mean for your brand strategy. I've put together this quick reference guide for you, so let's take a look at what your score means for you. If you scored under 3, then I think you are either a freak human being or you are kidding yourself about your own perfection. Maybe you have an amazing brand management team around you. Either way, I want you to reveal yourself so that the rest of us can learn from you. If you scored between 4 and 5, you're on the strong side of normal. So by this, I mean that you are doing a lot of the right things to control your brand. Like most things in life though, you can always improve. But with a score like this, I think you're probably already on the right path and trajectory towards success. If you got 5 to 7, you are on the weaker side of normal. So it's time for you to take a fresh look at what could be preventing you from consistently delivering a stronger brand message. Revisit where you scored your points today, and this is going to give you a really clear indicator about where you need to focus the most. It might be time to call upon some fresh creative expertise to help you navigate this better. If you scored 8 to 10, then I'm sorry, my darling, but you have some pretty big branding problems. It's fair to say that you could actually be being your own worst enemy. It's time to call in some expertise to help put you straight on how to strengthen things back up and help you get to your goals quicker. If you've enjoyed taking part in this quiz with me today, I would love it if you take a couple of seconds to invite your biz bestie along to take part too. You guys can talk together about what your score was and maybe even keep each other accountable on getting things improved. To keep on learning more about your branding and creative direction, why not check out these episodes next? I've been your host, Laura, and I'll see you next time. Mwah! Now, before you go anywhere, don't forget to subscribe.